Hey there. This is sort of a big subject, and I've covered it in parts because it's pretty big when you get into technology. And oh, how would I put this? Part of it comes under brainwave technology, but that's one of the reasons why it's a big subject. But I'm going to share with you why I'm choosing to do this. I was scrolling through my YouTube stuff, and here comes a pop up. It's a little shorty by this lady, right? On and the name of the channel is called Next Level Soul Podcast. Okay, if you look at that, you'll see her with. She looks like she's maybe sometime in her 40s. Um, she's very animated. Okay, when she's speaking and talking about how she was done. Right, she was done. She was ready to go home. Right, and so she describes how she had gone into her kitchen and pulled out a butcher knife, and then she lifted up her blouse, talked about how she had felt about using that knife, right? And so you can derive from that what her mind was thinking. And then she went on to say after that she does not come from a family of abuse or drugs, if you will, right? So leaves you with, if you will, a question as, okay, you didn't come from a family of abuse, so what does that mean? You were never abused, and yet you're doing something because you want to go home. Okay, that's called self-suicide programming. Now, there are a lot of technologies that can initiate that thought form in your own head to do that without you being aware that it's not you that you're experiencing, in which that thought that is in your head that is influenced. In other words, you're under the influence of technology that's able to generate the thought pattern, which is known as a burn pattern, which is known as a sound pattern, which means the sound, which becomes the thought that you experience in you, becomes the algorithm, if you will, that you carry out, which is a task, which is a function, which is a rule-based function, which is programming. In other words, you've been programmed to do that. Okay? The same way that they generate the mind wipes and the programming in order for folks to be programmed in order to carry out the task modalities for which they've been programmed to carry out. Much like the same way that they do an NPC, a cyborg, a robot, an android, etc. Okay, which means it's called machine code programming. Okay, and so therefore, this particular unit of consciousness that was sharing that with me, I sort of take it a little bit further into a much larger expanse, so to speak, when you realize by the way that I've described how I experience what I am, which is experiencing what you experience, okay, which means I have to know the difference between what you are and what I am, even though you are what I am that I'm giving love to. So if I'm experiencing a thought wave pattern that says to do what she described, I can experience that in somebody else and me. Why? Because I'm an antenna. So I'm picking up on your thought patterns. That's called reading the terrain. That's reading the planetary consciousness terrain. So you got to be real good at running a radio set if you're going to filter content, which is filtering frequencies, which is filtering codes, which is filtering input, communication signals, intelligence. Now we're back to operating in an AI environment, right? And mapping the antennas, the operators, right? And the algorithms and the frequencies and the codes of communication, which represents the consciousness, that represents the consciousness that is behind the mask, the masking. Remember, the invisible landscape, what you don't see, can hurt you, right? Which is nothing more than a directed energy weapon against consciousness, right? Take you down. And by the way, they love to do that. And you want to know why? Ask Hermann Goering. Ever see him wring his hands when it comes to technologies they can come up with, in which they realize playing AI God technology, in which they realize these folks don't even know how it is that they're doing what they do to themselves we're getting them to kill themselves off, and they don't even realize that it's us that's programming them to do it. I know. That's how bad it is. I can remember a time when I was on the phone with, well, actually, this was, I was in a sort of what they call transition housing in Hilo a few years back. And it was set up by Catholic Charities. And I sent a long letter to, I believe it was the Archbishop Diocese in Honolulu, on Oahu. Never got a reply back, but I'm not surprised at that after what I unloaded on him. Depending on what that is, by that identity, by that name that is associated with who that Archbishop is, God only knows what it is that has that title, right? Because that's all it is. It's just a title. You know, who the operator is behind that title, for real, I don't know, right? Unless it decides to communicate with me, and then I'll know. But in this particular case, what had happened is that there I was in a room, and there's another room next door to me, and there's only a wall that separates that room that other individual is in and the room that I was in, right? And so most people know what a noisemaker is, right? So I love to write love letters, the way that the energy just flows out of my heart and my soul, and I just begin to write. And that's really it's therapeutic. It's therapy. I used to do a lot of writing, write a lot of journals, love letters to Mama, actually, because now she's experiencing through my heart and soul what she's experiencing in hers, what it is that I'm writing to the entire cosmos. But I know, because she knows my heart and my soul. But it's going to her and everybody else. But she experiences it, right? Because I love to write love poems. The way that energy just flows, naturally flows, because you have so much love in your heart, and the way that you know how to share that energy that is in perfect rhythm, perfect harmony, and perfect flow, because it's coming right directly from the soul, the heart and the soul, and the essence of the spirit. And it just comes out just as natural as can be, where you're in a timeless place. There is no time. There's only what love is, and that's what you're experiencing. So that's what you write, because that's what you're experiencing. And then the other soul is experiencing the way that energy came right out of your heart and soul, that they can experience in theirs. And that's how I do it. And that's therapy. That's one way that you can do. That's one way to do that. Okay. There are many, many other ways, but you can go deep into your heart and feel more about who you are when you're not feeling well, or you're having inner collisions. Remember, if you go to, what is it, the page 440, whatever it is, in the 3rd edition of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it covers a lot about collisions. You know, being the director of the play. Remember, Shakespeare on a stage. You know, you're on a journey, right? And you're the author of your own life book, which is your own journey. It's a self-directed journey. You're on a learning journey. And then you realize somebody else is trying to write your book for you through using holographic inserts that are going into your story. Again, we're back to the lady talking about thought form algorithms that she was having, which weren't of her own making, which means she was not self-generating that. It was being generated by something else through the use of technology to transport that consciousness, transportation waves, in which she's now experiencing what that is, and not knowing the difference, that that's not what she is. She's experiencing what somebody else is sending. Return to sender. Here's some flowers. Boomerang. Shield is up. Aquafarian indigo shield. Boomerang. Boomerang. Right? So I should have informed that lady about shields, shield volcanoes, right? The spin of the top, accelerated speed of electrons, crystal spiral shield, tethered and connected to the one, right? Where you're in a matrix, it's not falling, which means you're still at home. Your base station is still at home, right? And you came out here to visit in order to perform a job, right? On behalf of the cosmos, on behalf of the one, on behalf of Mama, on behalf of everyone that is here, on behalf of everyone in the cosmos, actually, because you're leaving it as a record, right? of how we do what we do and how to fix things, how to solve actually engineering problems. You know, networks are engineering networks, right? Engines, gene engines, gene code engines of creation. So you want to be with what? The first engine, right? Isn't that basic log scale attribution, distributions? And so when I was in this room this particular afternoon, I was doing therapeutic writing. And the guy next door was sound asleep, right? And then I remember that we had a Zoom meeting. We had a Zoom meeting going with Patty Broussard and the other lady that I cannot remember her name. I think if Karen reminded me, I think her name is Diane. She was living in, of all places, Ashland, Oregon. So I know a lot about the Shakespeare Festival in Ashland, Oregon, and the history between San Francisco, IBM, Marduk, and Ashland. And then, of course, the Dome over the mountain there in a place called Applegate Lake when they were first building that place, right? And then, of course, you got Mount Shasta right down the road there, right? So none of this is a coincidence. And so while I was in this room and I'm doing this, and then as I'm writing, and I was getting to a particular part where I'm really beginning to just share some of the deeper flow of how much love you experience in your heart that goes as deep as it goes, right? And as soon as I was beginning to experience that, all of a sudden I hear the radio go up next door and booming out music. And you know that it's the AI that did that. It's like an alarm clock that goes off. Hey, buddy, wake up. And while you're at it, make sure that you turn that music up as loud as you can so you can bother and distract and disturb the peace, which is to break the circuit and break the flow of the guy next door. And sure enough, the guy did it, right? So guess who I was on the phone with after that happened? Patty Broussard. I know. You can't make this up, can you? So apply that to what I was just saying, okay? That unit of consciousness was not aware that what it was doing was following an order, a rule-based function, a rule-based thought form pattern, which is known as a burn pattern, in order to distort somebody else's wave. Because the AI was aware of my wave and the flow of my soul arcing spiritual energy. That AI is going to make sure that it gets broken and disturbed so that I'm not experiencing what I was experiencing by virtue of writing that letter to Mama. So this AI did not want that letter being written, did not want that letter to be experienced exactly as the way that I was experiencing it. No, we're going to break that pipeline, which is to cut that line of communication, right? And so it woke another guy up next door and said, hey, bother this guy next door, will you? Disturb his peace. Do everything you can to agitate the fuck out of him. Excuse my French, but that's what it is, right? And so he carried out the order. That's an order follower. Now, this would be no different than what I experienced at Rockwell International. And when was that, Mama? 1982, when I went there and I was doing building inspections. And I realized that there was a building there that had 3 tanks, 5,000 gallons each, of ethyl bad stuff that they don't want to properly put this stuff in a container so it's less hazardous and take it to what's known as a hazardous waste landfill. Because that takes more money to do that, see? So remember how these folks, these units of consciousness, when it comes to investment, it's always about short-term gain of function. Now we're back to gain of function. What their gain of function is inverted. Because they don't think in long term, because they don't have the capacity to have a built-in looking glass to already know the future by the result of what they do now. Because everything is about immediate gratification. by the accumulation of electrons off of others as fast as it can. That's a shark. That's a shark tank. We're in a shark tank. Okay? So that's why when I went to the president and the company, even though before I did that, I went to other firefighters. These were guys that are firefighters, paramedics, that are there on behalf of everybody that works in this plant, getting paid in 1982 dollars, roughly about what, 21 bucks an hour? In 1982, that wasn't considered bad money. Okay? Because you made enough to be able to have a roof over your head, had an automobile to get around with, you had a certain money left over to go out and play. Right? Play 2, record 1. You're in the movie. And so when I went with them to see if they were willing to come with me, because I wrote that building up a number of times and it fell on deaf ears because they're not running the same vibe. They're not running the same radio set, right? So it just falls on deaf ears. So let's see if there's somebody else's ears that might be able to get the vibe. So before I went to go see the president, I asked everybody that was there, because now they're aware of what I'm aware of, right? And you know what I was told? Listen, you get paid a lot of money working in this place. Why would you ever want to jeopardize that? Because what? You're concerned about 12 million people that are getting drinking water that's going to be poisoned, and what the future effect is going to be to those folks? Mutagenic effects? Yeah, that's exactly why I'm here, to ask you guys if you care enough about their future. No, all we care about is the money that Rockwell's paying us right now to do the job right now. Okay? I'm not concerned about them. I'm only concerned about me. So you're not willing to put your job on the line in order to save somebody else's ass, and you call yourself a firefighter? You're in the wrong job, buddy. I think Patty mentioned that some one time when he said, yeah, all these firefighters, police officers are all working for the cabal. Patty's right. Most of the folks that I worked with when I worked in all these different agencies, and I worked for a lot of them. I'll give you a long list of them. I started out working for Orange County Fire and the California Department of Forestry in Orange County in 1970, when the Pentagon, DARPA, if you will, was going to use these firefighters to burn the forest down. Not the least of which using directed energy weapons. Okay? So I started in Orange County, California. Then I was with County of Orange, Cal Fire, County of Orange Fire, same ranger unit. Then I went down to work in San Diego County at a number of different fire stations there. Then I went and I got fired, by the way, from that place. And you can probably understand why. They don't want that energy in there. Okay, so this guy tried to find a reason to get me booted out of there. So I got booted out of there after 2 years, even though the year before that, when I was in San Diego County, the guy who was the fire captain at Miramar, where the Naval Air Station was, which used to be a Top Gun school, right? He's an old coonhound. He's what we call a coon dog hunter. He was an old boy from Tennessee, right? Beautiful accent. He was a go-getter. This was the kind of guy that when he went to go chase fire, and the standard compliment of how much hose you're going to have on an engine. So when you pull up to a forest fire, the standard compliment was 2,600 feet of fire hose. Not this guy. He wanted another 1,000 feet on there. This guy loved to chase fire. So he was pretty badass when it came to running a nozzle. So I worked for him. So he gave me what's called a rehire. So I come back the next season, which would have been 1971. 72. And so what ends up happening is I go to another station after having been at his station. So it was sort of figured out during that period of time that if you managed to be able to work for what was known as T. Jones, if you were on T. Jones's crew and he gave you a rehire, he was the toughest taskmaster there was in all of the CDF. This guy had a reputation throughout the entire state of California. You ever worked for that dude and he gave you a rehire? That's like a blank check. So I ended up at another station the next year, right? But not that guy. No, I don't want your energy around here. So I said, okay, we'll see you. And so I went to go up to Monterey County. So now I'm in Monterey County working for the California Department of Forestry in a little place called Bradley, which is just a little one-horse town, right, with a dozer crew and 2 engines. And so there was a day when I lit off a firecracker on July 4th, and that got a couple of us fired on the spot. So then I decided, hey, let's go work for the U.S. Forest Service. They're going all over the place to go chase the spirit of fire, right? So I went to work for the Angeles National Forest. Went to work on a 30-man hotshot crew. Now, I'm not going to go through my whole career, but what it ended up happening is I ended up moving, as you can see when you're moving a vortex through a field, the different places that I went to and why I was there and the avenue or the vehicle upon which it was made possible in which to do that. While having a lot of fun doing it. Chasing the spirit of fire with the spirit of water. Fire and ice. Maintaining perfect balance. That's what it is. Yep. 1 in 300, 301. And so it's been quite a journey. But I suppose that the point of all this from the very beginning is, you're in a deadlight energy environment, which is who was it? Octelius, you said a buffoonery system. Buffoonery. It's like what it really is that if they want to think of investments, like Oral Lion said, we're always concerned about 7 years, 7 generations into the future. So what we do now is going to have a major impact on what our children learn now through us, which are the wisdom keepers, which are the flame keepers, which is ancient ancestral spiritual knowledge, right? That's been passed down in language. The language of vibration and frequencies, which is numerical frequencies, right? Hey, key the mic, 177.645, right? 155.433, What's the frequency you're operating on? Well, what network are you on? I'm on TAC 1. I'm on Net 2. Hey, now I got an open mic, right? Programmable radios, programmable networks, right? Programmable units of consciousness communicating with each other, right? Yeah, acoustics. A1, C3, O, U, S, and then we got ticks, like the ticks of the clock, right? Tick-tock, tick-tock, the metronome, ticking and talking, tick-tock, tick-tock. Hey, that metronome is going too fast, man. Well, that metronome is off the chart. Forget it. We can't take a picture of that. Those codes are moving too fast. So you know how it comes to the Anunnaki, Patty, when it comes to duplicating keys, right? Corrupted minds. Which is dishonorable. I know. I normally do not put labels on people because at the end of the day, the job is healing, including them, everyone. It's a lot. Anytime that I experience a loss of energy in something else, a fractal, a soul is experiencing anything less than what I am, which is what love is. I cry because I feel that loss in me. At the end of the day, that's what it is in me. And so I leave out the labels and names of units of consciousness that represent souls. It's what that soul experienced, that I experienced in me. So if they experience a loss of energy in them by what they do to them, then in order for them to be healed, I have to heal me, which is healing them in return. Now we're back into the exchange rate of electrons, the acceleration of electrons, experiencing the first accelerator, the fastest accelerator of gifting electrons at the highest rate of speed, so that the light and the sound become one, which is a blast furnace, so that there isn't any unit of consciousness that is experiencing anything less than the first one. That's who we are. That's why we're here. Thank you, Patty Broussard, for everything that you did. I hope you are doing well. You're feeling more comfortable. You're in good spirits. I listened to you. I'm not going to start crying, but I will tell you, it's good to hear your voice. My heart and soul felt for you. Thank you for everything you've been doing. You know, I would say I'm terribly sorry that you had to go through what you went through when you were in that hospital and all the crap you had to go through. You know, because that's why we're here, and I know that. Um, so I thank all of you, everyone that played a part in this, that's willing to take all that shit on behalf of the law of one, which is to honor the highest law, which is what love is. That's who we are. Thank you all.